call together the Board of Selectmen's meeting.
I think we want Joe here, don't we?
Pardon?
Oh, Joe's not here. Hang on.
Oh, hang on one second.
Just thought I'd let you know.
Yeah. We'll start it with the Pledge of Allegiance. I'll start again. I want to open the Harwich Board of Selectmen's meeting for December 23rd, 2019. Statement that we need to do. As required by the open meeting law, you are hereby informed that the town will video and audio taping as well as live broadcasting this public meeting. In addition, anyone in the audience who plans to video or audio tape this meeting must notify the chairman to the start of the meeting. See no interest. I ask you to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, with liberty and justice for all.
Just a comment, I received a text just about an hour ago from Michael. He's enjoying a few hours in an airport somewhere. And
Oh, yeah.
been bumped a couple times, so he's not going to make this meeting. Hopefully he'll get back sometime tonight or later. Move then to a weekly briefing. Joe?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We actually have the weekly briefing update for the period of this week, actually through the week of ending January 17th. We just received that update today, and that's been posted to the website. The look ahead this week, the week of December 23rd through the 27th, mainline sewer crew number 1 subcontractors are performing various tasks at various locations. Sewer crew number 2 is commencing installation on Ellis Drive and White Pine Circle. There is no work being conducted on December 25th. Next week, the week of December 30th, there'll be no work on January 1st. Sewer crew number 1 will continue working with subcontractors at various locations. Sewer crew number 2 will return to continue installation on Route 137, which again necessitates detours. For the look ahead, the week of January 6th, mainline sewer crew number 1 will still be working with subcontractors at various locations. Sewer crew number 2 will continue installation on Route 137 with detours in place. And for the week of January 13th, sewer crew number 1 working with subcontractors, and sewer crew number 2 continuing installation on Route 137, and again, that's requiring detours. And Mr. Chairman, with your indulgence, I would just ask that the board would consider taking item letter J under new business, which was a discussion and possible vote on the contractor extension of on-site work hours, if the board...
Please, move
Yep.
ahead.
So I wanted to draw the board attention to the memo that I had written with today's date, reporting out in a meeting that was conducted, a regularly scheduled construction meeting that was conducted on last Tuesday, December 17th. And that would be representatives from the town, from the contractor for Phase 1, Contract 1, being Robert B. Auer, representatives from CDM Smith, the design engineering firm, and representatives from Weston and Sampson, our community outreach firm. And part of that discussion centered on the issue of extended hours, as we've talked many times before. We had a frank discussion, but I think a very productive discussion in the end. And if you see in that packet of materials, we have received a request from the contractor, and they are respectfully requesting an extension of work hours from Monday through Friday from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. to facilitate installation of the sewer system on Route 137. They indicate that the additional work hours would allow them to install the system in a more timely fashion and would shorten the disruption of the road closure and detours to the public. That request has been vetted by staff, and we all agree. So my recommendation to the board, for the board to validate, is that the town permit the contractor to extend their contractual on-site work hours beyond 4 p.m., extend to 7 p.m. Monday through Fridays, to facilitate installation of the sewer system on Route 137 along and adjacent to the portion of roadway in front of the Stop and Shop complex as requested by the contractor. So this is a temporary extension. It's to help them get through the toughest part of Route 137. Not that the extension couldn't extend beyond that, but wanted to give the board a finite period of time and the general public an understanding of the intent of that. But I would recommend that the board affirm that extension of hours.
So how long?
Say again?
Until,
The hope is that until they get past the section of 137 adjacent to Stop and Shop.
Don, you have other comments?
I more or less do. I could preface it by saying I lived in this town a really long time. I have nothing but good things to say about the Auer family in general, but the thing went out as an RFP. It had certain hours. I'll probably wind up supporting this, but it had certain hours, and unfortunately, I think Michael was under the impression that they were closing down at 4, no matter what we've said, whether they were extended hours or more extended hours, they've always been longer than that. I mean, I've seen it open as late as 9:45. In general, if you put out a contract and you've got a performance completion date, and then you got dates and times inside of that, if somebody was going to allege that you get to that conclusion by these hours, that would have been, it should have been done a long time ago. And what's concerning me is that if this happens, that they got to adhere to what it is they're promising, or else it's not worth much anything.
Don, that's from on this, is that I'm getting information from both sides. One, that they're working too late, and it's uncomfortable. And the other side is that we're not giving enough time to complete the project in a timely fashion. I get your contract. I think Joe did a good job of negotiating the 7. I think as a board, what we want to emphasize is we extend it to 7. We mean to live by that time, that they quit at 7 at night.
I'd be willing to
that
make
hard
that
and
motion
fast
then, that we,
in that regard.
that we approve Mr. Powers is negotiated, but that those are going to be the times.
Right. Steve, any other additional comments?
That sounds reasonable to me.
Ed? Joe?
I just need to confuse the matter. I apologize, Mr. Chairman. This is a request for regular on-site work hours, separate from what was already agreed to. It's my understanding that they have the 3 remaining deep manholes, the extended hours for those, and that's really to expedite out of the neighborhoods. The grant there has been until 8:30 p.m.
Right.
The board aware
Right.
of those 2 items.
I understand that. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
Any comments from the audience? If not, we have a motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Okay, we'll with that, and the motion, of course, is that now nothing happens beyond 7 except for those time periods where they have the deep manhole cover.
Except for the 8:30s.
That's 4 times.
And that's also when they resume the work in front of, on 137 in front of Stop and Shop, which would not impact this week.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Move to the public comments. Thank you, Richard. Everyone here is anxious to get out of here for Christmas, I can tell.
Merry Christmas and Happy Hanukkah, everybody. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Mr. Powers. Final reminder, your tax bills are going to be coming out in the next couple of weeks. And if you are heading south and you wish to file a challenge to the value of your property and through the abatement process, you must do it and have it filed by February 1st. We will not consider it after that fact. As a reminder that it's available downstairs at the assessor's office. The abatement forms are available online as well. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Happy holidays to everybody.
Thanks, same to you.
Are you getting many requests? Don't give me
People haven't gotten
number,
the bills
just
yet.
a lot.
Once they get the bills, they will see values increased. They will see with the tax rate up that their tax bills are going up. Again, it's for us this year, the reminder is that the abatement process does not challenge your taxes. It just challenges the value of your property.
Yeah.
So it's very, very important because the folks downstairs in the assessing department, they hear it. My taxes are going up. My taxes are going up. Same message. Talk to you as a board, come to town meeting, have your voice heard there about spending. You can only challenge your value through the abatement process. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you,
Chairman.
Richard. Anyone else for public comment? Announcements? Move into consented. Does someone want to jump up? Move to consent agenda, Steve?
Consent agenda, vote to approve the 42nd Irish Pub Annual Road Race application for Saturday, August 1st, 2020, to begin at 10 a.m.
Any discussion? Doesn't take anyone from the audience. This road race going on forever is a great event. And just stay out of the neighborhood if you're not in it.
Wow, 42.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Moving into contracts. Joe, I'll let you lead this discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. The first item, the discussion and possible vote relates to the DHY Clean Waters Professional Services Agreement. This is a proposed agreement with CDM Smith. David Young is here from CDM Smith. The total amount of the contract is $20,000. You've seen this on your agenda for several meetings. Mr. Young was able to verify the language that Griffin Ryder was providing him with from council. I believe CDM Smith's council has reviewed that as well. Mr. Young has signed the contract. It is with the town accountant for a finance director for review of available funds. My request here would be, if the board is so willing, it is a contract that is not more than $25,000. It has been the standard for the administrator to sign. So I'm bringing this forward to ask the board if you want to resume that practice or if you want to have the board sign. It is 2/3 of the way before you, but not completed yet, insofar as staff has to sign.
You raised a couple questions.
I tend to do that, Mr. Chairman. I apologize.
One is source of funding. Is your intent to take that out of reserve funds? Is that, can someone, Carol, are you, or Joe, or one of you?
Hi, good evening, Carol Coppola. As you're aware, there was $225,000 that was appropriated to the Sewer Enterprise Fund this year, $100,000 being designated for local support for sewer hookups, and then $125,000 was designated for the IMA in Chatham to build up the fund reserves. Those are the funds that I know that you have some of it available. Some of it has already been appropriated for the contract you have in place for $75,000 for Weston and Sampson. But the other funds are available at this point. That's the available funding source that I'm aware of.
So out of that, we agreed, we approved $6,000 2 weeks ago for the DHY review.
Okay.
And that's the only, and all the rest of the funds still remain there, minus
Correct.
the 6,000. Okay. Anyone comment? Ed?
No, I'd make a motion that we approve the contract for professional services between DHY and the town, funding to come from the sewer enterprise funds, and the town administrator to sign the contract.
Is there a second?
Second.
Don?
Yeah, I think it's a little redundant. I mean, we've already delegated an authority at a dollar level, and he's bringing it up to us that it's out there. I'm not sure that we have to approve of something we've already delegated within a certain financial cap.
Right.
I'm assuming the money's available.
He's just looking for,
Joe?
I do think it's instructive, though, that the board is indicating this sewer enterprise fund as a funding source. That's going to be helpful for the finance director and myself,
Okay.
that the board wishes to go that route.
In that spirit, I'll support it.
Any other discussion? Anyone in the audience care to discuss it? If not, all in favor?
aye.
Unanimous? Joe, you're on for a lot of this, so.
Certainly. So the Covanta, this is the 1-month agreement that the DPW Director had mentioned, we're working towards achieving contract language with both Covanta and New Bedford Waste Services. In the interim, Covanta has offered a one-month agreement which will allow the town to continue this process for the month of. However, the rate of $90 per ton, which references the term sheet that we saw last week, it's the expected tonnage of 600 tons of municipal solid waste that bring it over the 25,000. So for that reason, it's coming before the board for the board to approve the execution of this contract. However, given that we're dealing with I believe a multinational corporation, they already have the technology in place to do electronic signature. So it would be the board approving the contract and either designating the chair or another person to electronically sign.
Okay. Thank you, Joe. As I understand it, if we don't move ahead, we have no place to take our solid waste starting January 1.
In a week, yeah.
That's correct.
And so it's a tough,
I think we're kind of,
Let's think about this.
it simplifies the
Mr. Chair.
decision.
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the one-month agreement for municipal solid waste for January 2020 at $90 a ton with Covanta.
And authorize the chair
and-
to sign?
You want to designate me to sign it?
Sure.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Any more discussion? If not, anyone in the audience? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Passed. You're on a roll, Joe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. These next two items are both regarding the solar work that's going to be done or is being done at the Cranberry Valley Golf Course. But these are two documents that are not financial in nature, but more to land ownership. I wanted to make the board aware of these documents, and as well as you'll see in your signature packet, all of the other documents that the board had approved relative to CVAC back in November came back to us because they were pagination issues that the other party did not appreciate. Liz Argo spent about an hour and a half in my office today going through them. So for these two items, I would just be asking for the board to approve these items and authorize me as administrator to sign them. The board would also be asked this evening to sign all of the other documents. You've already voted them. It's just to finalize that process.
It's comforting to know there's somebody more bureaucratic than we are.
Yeah.
Ed?
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the landowner consent agreement between Eversource and Cranberry Valley Golf Course. And do we all sign that? Or do you?
No, the town is going
Joe
to
does.
sign it. Joe will sign that.
And that we authorize the town administrator to sign.
Second.
Any discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
And make a motion on D, it's the same.
Sure. I move we approve the agreements between Eversource and Cranberry Valley on the standard sign.
Second.
Second. The only discussion I would have is that, I don't know how long that Chris worked to negotiate this, but it was
Yep.
a year and a half or so, because they came in at a very high cost for us doing this. And that was an important article for the golf course, because they very much wanted to move solar in their new golf carts, so.
They did a great job.
We count this as a win. We can get through and get this last document signed, and they'll start solar golf carts, I think, not this summer, because they're already tied into a lease for golf carts, but a year from now.
Yeah.
So it's a very positive move.
Absolutely. We're hoping to have the bulk of the work done through the summer, starting in July. So as you say, not for this season, but very soon.
Yeah, good. All right, it's been, motion's been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, unanimous. And now we move next to public hearing. Habitat for Humanity, and Vicky, this is your farewell song then?
This is my swan song, yes.
You can still come back and visit, you know.
I live here, so you'll see me at town meeting, et cetera.
Committee memberships.
Committee, yeah, we have committees
No,
available.
enough committees to last a lifetime.
You see her,
Excuse me?
see her on the trails.
That's
at,
right, Conservation
Thompson's
Trail,
Field.
right, in the recycling center.
Okay, we'll stop picking on you and ask for your
That's-
report.
Happy trails to.
There you go. So it's been a good run. I've enjoyed working as part of Habitat with the town of Harwich. We built the 13 homes at Gomes Way in 2009, 7 homes on Oak Street, and we're on the verge of building another 6 homes now, Murray Lane in West Harwich. Because of that, as I'm retiring December 31st, I wanted to assure you of a seamless leadership transition. After an external search, Habitat promoting Wendy Cullinan, who's been with the organization over 5 years. She's a wonderful leader. She'll be stepping into my shoes as executive director. It will be really a seamless transition. We couldn't remember if Beth Wade had been before this board or not in the past. She moved into the position previously held by Lidora Zola. She was before the Board of Selectmen a number of times as we were proposing Murray Lane. And Beth, who's here tonight, is our Director of Land Acquisition and Project Development. So she deals with, she does extensive communication town officials and staff to smooth the way for our developments, and has already, I know, met with or spoken with Joe and with Charlene extensively and so forth. So to let you know, Murray Lane, we are poised to commence that road and bring in the water and so forth as soon as Mr. Thatcher removes the right side of that building, which is imminent. And that will position us to stay on our timeline to open applications for new homeowners at around the end of January, beginning February, raise walls in late summer or early fall. So that's when you can look forward to a very festive wall raising with the future homeowners and community volunteers. We will be putting up a construction fence fairly soon, because while we're digging those holes and putting in the road, we're not for drive-throughs from folks in the community. So I did want to mention that. In the good news department, last week we received a phone call from Federal Home Loan Bank of Boston that we were successful with our $180,000 from FHLBB, and that will help fund hard costs for the home construction. So that's 180 grand of off-Cape dollars come to plow into our construction industry down here. As an incidental matter, but it was well publicized on several Facebook pages and also in the local paper, a Native American artifact, a Brewerton ear notch type projectile point, was picked up on the Murray Lane site by a neighbor doing a bit of a walkabout there. We did invite the Museum of Natural History to come and look at the site, and they did what is called a thorough walkover of the site along with Beth and that neighbor, and concluded that this was not an archaeological site of interest, that it was likely dropped there, but it was still interesting. It showed that there was that activity in the area, and after communications with both the tribe and the museum, all parties concerned that felt it was best that Habitat donate that artifact to the Museum of Natural History so it could be properly preserved, displayed, etc. So we will be delivering it there on Monday as a donation from Habitat to the Museum of Natural History. I wanted to give quick mention that I think there's a little bit of community confusion now that a private corporation known as HFH is developing in Harwich. So just to let it be known that Habitat for Humanity of Cape Cod and the private corporation HFH are not associated in any way, for better or worse, to mix up our work. And I think, is that all I intended to say, Beth? That's all we have for you tonight, unless you have any questions about Murray Lane or anything else. It's really just thank you and farewell.
No, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Vicki. But
You
any
good?
other, Steve, any more than that? But we can't. Ed?
Nope. Other than not only thank you for this project, but for all the other projects that you shepherded through our town and the rest of the towns on Cape Cod.
Okay, well, thank you. Okay, take care.
Thank you, Vicki.
Happy holidays. Did you want an information sheet on the Brewerton
Sure.
ear notched? Okay, Beth brought them.
Oh, boy.
Thank you.
I have an electronic copy too. and I'll
If you could send
out
that to
tomorrow.
Joe, we can put it on our website or
Or
part of
something.
our packet. Thank you, Beth.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Next on our agenda is a public hearing, joint meeting with the Finance Committee and presentation of the 2021 capital outlay plan. And Joe, I guess we'll introduce it then. And Richard, are you going to speak to this as well or not?
I'm in the audience because it's a joint meeting of finance,
Looking at you, okay.
but I'll be glad to do it. Up there?
Yeah, join us and so you can answer questions as we go forward.
Like the Howdy Doody show.
It's okay, we can heckle you from the audience. Joe, you wish to start? I know you.
Thank you, Mr.
had
Can I have my
discussion.
vice chairman up here too?
Sure can.
Please.
When was that vote taken?
Check the notes. Check
It's in the memo, so.
It's in the memo. Don't worry about it.
Which meeting did you miss?
You weren't there.
None. I don't take a chance.
You know, just to start from my perspective, thank you very much for putting this together and all the work you did with, as your committee, and input from FinCan. And I know Chris Clark helped you out. Joe's now moving in. Carol's been instrumental in this. And I'm glad that that Joe pressed us to get this on tonight. This is a short, basically a preliminary discussion. We come back again next month with more detailed discussion. But with all of our concern about expenses, I think this capital outlay is really going to be looked at very closely on any item that we need to spend money on, those we may want to postpone a bit. And I really, I'm hoping we take this, everyone, our board and your board takes this very seriously in looking at our expenses going forward. So, good job though, putting all this together. Joe?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'm going to be referencing from my memo, but not verbatim. But as you stated, Mr. Chairman, the submittal of this plan by this time is in accordance with the provisions of the Town of Harwich Charter, as outlined in Chapter 9, Section 9-6-3, that the proposed year 2021 capital outlay plan be transmitted by the Town Administrator to both the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee before the end of December. As you've said, Mr. Chairman, I would like to extend my thanks to our Finance Director, Carol Capola, Capital Outlay Committee Chairman, Richard Larios, and Committee Vice Noreen Donahue. This was originally scheduled to come before the Board on December 9th. I pulled an audible and asked for some time to meet. Rich was very gracious in offering his time. We had an extensive meeting with our Finance Director, and then he brought additional resources with Noreen. So I want to thank them for the time that they gave up in a short period of time to bring me up to speed on the document that you have in front of you. I also want to thank the members of the committee, and I apologize, I took this information off the website and it may not be up to date. However, the website shows that we have I said that wrong, I apologize, Angelo. Finance Committee Liaison, Don Howell, Selectmen's Liaison, Joseph McParland, Planning Board Representative, Bruce Nightingale, Selectman Representative, and Peter Wall, Representative of the Town Administrator. I just want to identify some analysis and some changes to the plan. First of all, as you'll see, the total requested amount for fiscal year 2021 is $16,075,495, which includes potentially $1.5 million for the DHY CWMP revisions for Phase 3 of Harwich's share of the treatment plant, and the $8.4 million related to the proposed Phase 2 Contract 3 for Pleasant Bay South. Both of those items still need to be vetted by this board. I do want to point out that a total of $11.7 million capital items proposed to be funded by debt exclusion. And I only bring that out because it may bump against the board's, one of your objectives under your goals for 2020, as it indicates develop a debt budget which avoids the use of capital exclusion and limits the use of debt exclusions. So I just want to bear that out, that there is a large portion that would be related to debt exclusions. Some of those debt exclusion items, however, include the pump and ladder, referred to as the Quint, that we know was originally at $1 million, is now up to $1.1 million. A 3-year maintenance road plan, which unfortunately the last town meeting was not adopted. We have that in the plan going forward. And then the 2 items I just mentioned. I want to be clear that the Capital Outlay Committee, as has been their practice, has not made any present recommendations on the DHY Phase 3 Harwich share of treatment or the Phase 2 Contract 3. They have deferred to the administrator's report on that. And then lastly, there are, I added some recommended items relative to Channel 18. These were presented to Chris. They were presented to Chris after the deadline. He was working on them with Jamie. I've read the materials. The finance director has read the materials, and I've added those items specifically for fiscal year 21. I incorrectly listed that as a...
7 p.m.
Oh, thank you, Siri. I appreciate that. I noted that this would be a public access grant, and it's actually through the cable fund.
Okay.
And that is my quick reaction and handover of the capital plan with more to follow.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr.
Fine.
Chairman.
Thank you, Joe. We're just having first look at this. My only comment is on the 1.5 million for the DHY. Is that it's a little confusing because it's stated, I know in the capital plan as being a rephasing aspect. I think I'm correct, but that 1.5 million, I think, is our share of the design funds for the wastewater treatment facility. Yeah. It's not part of, we talk rephasing, it's looking at we're going to move Phase 3 here, over there. It's not part of that. It's our 15% of the total amount of building this plant.
Is that right?
That's right.
Okay.
Don?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, to build on what you just said, and that itself is only a portion of what we're obligated for, because there's segments of this that we're all together, and we pay our share for, like the...
This is only for the initial plant.
Yeah, except that you'll see in the next column that we lay pipe within the town and collectors within the town that we are fully responsible for, and that's probably about, what, 3/4 of the cost of the whole endeavor.
Okay, okay.
I just wanted to clarify that because the rephasing confuses a bit, but this will be a big decision that we'll work through, as Joe says, going forward. Noreen?
Must we vote on the funding this May, the 1.5, or is it possible for us to just vote on the agreement for DHY?
I can't give you a clear answer on that. We've had that discussion, a couple of meetings, our committee, the DHY meetings, and I think we're trying to have each town do it the same way. And so decisions not been made at that committee, whether we go to town meeting, moving ahead with a town agreement, but delay the vote for the 1.5 million until next year for the design funds, or bring them in together. I think my personal opinion is, no matter what we do, whether we vote for it or not, if we go for the agreement this May, we really need to have a clear understanding of where our costs are going to be going forward. So we're preparing that information as if it's going to be there. We may not do it. It may make sense to split the vote. And other towns have let me say it differently. Our practice has often been to, when we get a major project, to spend money on design first and then do it, the construction after we know the design. A lot of towns don't do that. The other towns, they don't try to do it that way. So I probably muddled your answer, but
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, just, that needs to be a disclaimer or a caveat. We haven't voted, the committee has not voted either one of those two.
right, that's what, Joe, I got that, yeah.
Okay, so we're submitting the plan.
Right.
I don't want to put TBDs, to be determined, kind of placeholder kind of stuff. But we've got the numbers there. Our vote will take place before town meeting.
Yeah.
And hopefully, the board will be in a position to say yay or nay, should the number be there or not.
Yeah.
And that's our intent.
And that's your call. And we'll reflect that.
Yeah. Don?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess there's no better time to say this because we still have time to talk. There's so many elements of this, and there's so much money involved in this, and we're resequencing so much to do it.
Yeah.
We have repeatedly been told that there's two alternatives. We either build something ourselves, and that cost is over here, or we do DHY, and that cost is over here. I got a little suspicious, especially looking at the timelines originally. I've mentioned to the chair what I'm going to say here. It's been flat out stated that there is no third option, and Chatham has made it clear they don't want to do anything with us. Since that was 5-year-old information, and it's largely a different board of selectmen there, I did take the opportunity to call their town manager, not to negotiate anything forward, and to talk to one selectman. The question was, are you closing the door to ever getting involved with us with another project? And the answer was no, it would depend. So I would suggest collaterally with this, that we, since we do have some time, that we look into that, and if they do, then we've got an answer at town meeting that tried again, it didn't happen. But I do know that Barnstable, that Yarmouth, at the same time they've been attending the DHY meetings and then done a cost recovery model for themselves doing it, they also went at discussions with Barnstable because it was an option that they felt like they wanted to exhaust before they would make a huge commitment, and this is a huge commitment. Yeah. And Steve and I have actually spoken after the last presentation, just so everybody's clear. One of the other downsides is that they can take money off the cherry sheet before it ever arrives at town. So our state aid never even gets here if we decide that we're not going to pay them. We are going to pay them, yeah, because there is no way to not pay them.
Chatham you're talking about?
No, this is DHY. It's baked in the cake. The legislation has it that they can impound our state aid. So with that, I would like to make absolutely certain myself that this is the cheaper alternative and it's the most efficient way of going.
Our commitment is to work this through in the next month or so, and as much as we can, get these answers, and then we'll respond to this. What you have in here is correct going forward, but we have some decisions to make.
Exactly.
Because you consider this plus 8.4 for contract 3, it's a lot to bring at one time.
It certainly is.
And it's not clear we can do that.
I would suggest that, you saw the numbers,
Right.
but on the last page, if you've got the color version, okay, the NBC version, it's critical that we pay attention to some of these graphs, because it puts into perspective. The numbers are changeable kind of thing, and these bar charts are critical to understand our future costs.
Agreed.
Okay?
Yes. Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah, couldn't agree more.
And the other caveat, and I say it every year when I come to present to you, is that we really have to look at the current assets that we have and to see these current assets are costing us a lot, and a lot of them don't bring us anything back. It's purely sunk cost. And until the town, if we have to maintain expending more money every year, we have to look backwards and say, we have assets that are costing us, that are inflating every year, and it's time to...
Richard, you're right. you brought this up before,
Yeah.
and we really haven't taken concrete action to explore that. So we need to figure out how we're going to at least respond to that question. Everything else, but
We've looked at it,
we need a mechanism to study this. We haven't done that.
I know, it's time that we really take a look at it seriously.
We
We
need
need to replace costs. If we have to do something here, we gotta get rid of something here.
And that would be an intense discussion as well, because no one wants to get rid of anything. So it's like cleaning your closet out.
Yeah,
But we need
I
to
have it if I buy a
expensive
pair of
closet.
shoes, I get rid of a pair of shoes.
Well, Don points out that's not a very good analogy, but
A really expensive closet.
We do.
but let's get together, let's work on that.
This is my 11th capital plan,
Yeah.
and it's a good one. I think it's a good one, and I think it's a good basis for us to move forward.
Oh, yeah, I think we agree, and that's a good point. Any other comments, Steve?
No, I just think as a reflection of what we went through last year, the emphasis is even greater to what Richard's saying. I mean, it's, we have to address it.
Ed? Don?
I said what I said. Thank you for all your effort.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for your effort, and
And yours.
I see we have some FinCom people. Thanks for attending. We didn't give you a chance to talk, John or Angelo, or whoever else is here, but. I mean, FinCom has to figure out the operating costs, how we're gonna pay once these guys run up the debt.
Hi, John Chory, Finance Committee. I just got one comment. Great plan, Rich and Noreen. I just have a comment on, there's a few holes in this capital plan as far as years going out, 7 years. Is the plan supposed to cover 7 years in total for all the departments?
If they have requests.
Correct me if I'm wrong, I thought we shortened it to 5 years.
No,
That was-
actually, the article that passed was 7, but it won't come into effect until after the ballot this
Okay.
May.
If
We
it's
wish it
voted.
was 5.
Yeah, 7 years, I'm not sure, it's hard to project 5, 7 years, we have a hard time with 5,
But in any event, it hasn't hit the ballot yet. It only
Right.
passed town meeting.
Right. Correct.
And the capital plan does reflect any department requests during that 7-year period. So if there's not a department on here, they didn't have any requests presently for the 7-year period.
Isn't that the idea of a capital plan, to have a 7-year or 5-year plan of what
Yes,
these
but if there's-
departments?
But if there's no request, then it's 0. Then there's a blank.
So there's no request from some of these departments 3 years out?
Right.
That's right.
Okay.
They're saying they
So-
could run the spreadsheet, 2 more columns and put zeros in.
But I thought we were supposed to have a 5-year plan, of a 5-year request going out. And some of these,
It's a
there's only 2
7-year
years going
request
out.
plan. The current plan and the input to this plan
Yeah.
is for 7 years.
Right.
By department. If a department doesn't have anything in the 3rd year or the 4th year, it's 0.
I understand
They
that.
get next year, they could renew, they get a new version, and there could be something in it.
That's my point. We're supposed to be planning, and if they can come back every year and go forward and asking for more money, how do we know? If we're trying to plan for 5 years out, and the departments aren't filling in their 5-year plan.
John, let me give Don a crack and Ed a crack at
Okay.
answering your question.
You're right, John, but when this actually comes online in full effect for the 7 years, let's assume it goes past the ballot, because I believe it will. There was a substantial groundswell for this. If next year somebody comes in, that's the problem with what we had. It was a capital budget, not a capital plan. If next year somebody comes in, unless there's a compelling argument and there's a mechanism for that, it's going to go in year 7 and work its way up, because that's what the plan calls for. It can't go to 3 or 4 or 2 and enter that way. It would have to get voted at town meeting to resequence.
Ed, then I go to Noreen.
That's true. However, I look at the cemetery. They have some items in FY '21 I don't have anything going out. That's not to say we don't get another tornado and they lose some things in their cemetery, and they'll have what amounts to an emergency request that will come in and be presumably planted in, you know, FY '22 or '23, whatever the emergency. But in the normal course of their business, they, you know, you lay out the graves and they get filled up, but there isn't a whole lot of capital work once the graveyard's laid out.
The other thing,
Go ahead, Richard. Yeah.
the majority of the requests and the departments are really affecting the operating budgets.
Yeah.
Okay? Of which the finance committee should be concerned about. When it hits the long term above 50 grand, then it comes to us.
Yeah.
So it's sort of a joint venture here. And if the real thing is to lower costs, it is not on the capital side most of the time. The majority are the yearly operating costs per department. So, I mean, that's the other side where you see blanks. And you just talked about cemetery. Basically, those would be considered operating costs, but
Yeah.
it just hit, boom. And it's a one-shot deal.
Noreen?
John, I know you understand the process, obviously, but I just wanted to expand and say, I can stand on my bed. Each department head actually turns in a data sheet, an actual request with all the information pertaining to whichever specific project it might be. And they turn that in for, you know, year 1, year 3, year 5, year 7, whenever they best guess it's gonna fall. And then come next year, they're gonna turn in all those forms again. They don't just carry over. So that's where the blanks come from. It just means that department head in his best estimation, only had expenses over 50,000 planned for like 3 of those 7 years or whatever. But I just wanted to express that it's based on more than a discussion with the town administrator. It's actually a data sheet that covers all the ins and outs that they know of the project.
Okay, I just was looking for what we're gonna spend in 7 years on the capital side, that's all. And there's some holes in that plan.
I would disagree. And I've worked on this a long time. And historically, where you came from, and you said you've worked on the capital plan, or capital budget per se, you worked it differently. The way this town has worked it, this is the best reflection of that.
Okay, I'm just trying to plan out 7 years of what capital requests are by department, that's all.
And so are they, and so are we, so I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you. Any other comments on the capital plan? Joe, thanks for bringing this in and for attending. Sandy?
It's all right. Sandy McClarty, now I'm confused. If there's a hole for year 3, outside of a tornado, say for the cemetery, and they have, next year they say, actually, we want to spend 60,000 on whatever, could that go into year 3?
And next year's plan.
Or does it have to wait for that 7-year plan or 5-year plan to expire?
Richard, you're shaking your head. You can.
No, this plan is very fluid. You can't, if there's an opening in the 3rd year and there's nothing there, and we come back next year when the town administrator puts out the request forms, the 3rd year of this plan would be the 2nd year of the next plan. So they actually could put something in. So it could be 0 here at blank, and then next year when we do the new plan, they say, oh, you know what we need? We need all new lighting, like the library.
It's someone's best guess.
Well, yeah, it's planning.
It's best,
It's-
the best
it's
plan.
best. I mean,
The
it's
best laid plans of my cement.
It's exactly when you,
But we can move on.
yeah.
The discussion we've had in the past is the difference between a capital budget and a capital plan.
Right.
Yeah, I think the meeting, what we tried to get through last town meeting was move it more towards, if I got my definitions right, a capital budget, where it's very difficult to insert another budget item 3 or 4 years down the way. You're supposed to wait your turn. Because we had some instances where people didn't do that, and it bumped up. In saying that, it's not a perfect world, so we can't do that all the time. Emergencies come in that we have to put funding in. But the intent is if you don't need anything till 4 years out, you're gonna put in the capital budget for 4 years out and wait 4 years. That's the intent of what went to town meeting. That's been our discussion going back and forth, was heated discussions of Ed,
And just one last question. So would a zero be similar to a number? Say their budget was 100,000, but things, it's treated the same, right? A blank versus a number.
If they want to put a number in where it was blank, more likely is that they've given us a number,
Yeah.
okay? We don't vote, we literally are voting, this is the key. We literally vote on the plan that, or the numbers that are shown in the current year.
Yeah.
The other numbers are really my
Pete,
good
you
friend
said
and yours.
placeholders.
Pete, that's it.
That's
Pete
clear.
Watson said
Thank you.
they're placeholders.
That's clear. Thank
And then there was a period of time when the committee and whoever was the town administrator, they left everything blank. And if you, some of the plans, it's only the current year you voted on, and then everything else is nothing. So then we made a change and we said, no, we've got to put some numbers in. So,
Ed and Noreen? No, okay, Noreen?
Now that Rich says it's clear, I'm going to muddy it up. So the vote passes successfully in May, and that third year that we're talking about is blank. If somebody comes along and has a project and puts a number in there, that's fine, but at the next May town meeting, that would have to be specifically voted on with a 2/3 majority by the town meeting people. Not necessarily that one item, it might be voted the whole plan, you know, with the changes that have happened, but there'll be an extra approval step put in based on the charter vote
Yeah.
recommended last
Thank
year.
you for bringing that, reminding us of that, Noreen. Go ahead, Don.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to be really clear, guys, this isn't going to creep up on us. What I just said, past town meeting, has to pass the ballot. We've got a year and a half to be able to discuss what the next capital plan will be like, because it is going to change, Rich. You have to enter at 7 unless you get a 2/3 vote to enter somewhere else. But that's not happening this year. What's happening this year is what you got in front of you. So I think we should probably stay focused on that.
Nevertheless, nice job. It gives us.
Thank you.
It does what we need to do. It lays it out for us. Now we can have some, you reviewed it. We can debate it further and come and work together, see where we go. Joe?
And Mr. Chairman, to that point, the charter does require that on January 6th, it will be a public hearing for discussion of the capital plan just presented in joint meeting with Capital Outlay Committee, Finance Committee, and Board of Selectmen.
Okay.
So that will be on the agenda as a public hearing for January 6th.
And, you know, it's like Rich said, it's a plan. It doesn't account for catastrophes, doesn't account for changes in what people want. You know, we built some pickleball courts. Well, 7 years before we built those pickleball courts, I don't think there was much of a demand in town for pickleball, but it became the thing, and so it inserted itself in the plan.
a real
You know,
concrete
and that
one is
happens.
nobody ever estimated Fontaine would
No.
have to have its own, I mean, build up the ambulance squad.
That's right.
I mean, we didn't
Right.
estimate that 8 years ago.
No.
So that's a prime example.
No, you're right. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Hey, happy Hanukkah, you know. Thank you so much for your
Much
time.
appreciated.
Buona Natale.
Yeah. Thank you.
Feliz Navidad.
That's it.
Moving on to new business, I think, Joe, you have annual liquor license renewals.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Festivus for the rest of us, right?
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With regard to the annual liquor license renewals, staff is asking that the board approve the items in the packet. However, I would ask for annual liquor licenses that the board approve those renewals, subject to completion of packet and all required materials.
Is there a motion? Let me, before we do that, discussion, Don? Any discussion?
No, the only thing that I would add to that is that, especially when we've explicitly put conditions on
That we
liquor
review those,
licenses, that actually be in the packet.
Ed?
Yes. On the motion?
No, discussion first, 'cause I want to make a comment.
Please go.
The question I had is on the liquor license, there seemed to be, maybe I need to read it more closely, but there seemed to be some variability in opening and closing times. Did we at one time, I know we've discussed it, did we come to a resolution about trying to keep a unified starting and closing time for these establishments?
Well, I can speak to the closing times. The board's regulations are still in effect. We do have copies of those, and I believe all licensed establishments need to be closed by 1 AM unless there's a specific vote of the board. For example, New Year's Eve, times like that.
Pouring
Okay.
license.
Sorry, yes, pouring
Pouring
license,
license,
correct.
yeah.
Section 15, if I'm saying it
Could you
right.
just confirm, when you put together the license material, just recheck the timing
Absolutely.
on those?
Yep. We're also going to be sending out those regulations to all license holders that pour, just so they're aware of it, which is required in the regulations.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other comments? That was my only question. I was just wanted to check the timing. If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Pass
Oh.
unanimously?
Okay. Who made the motion?
Okay, sorry. You mentioned it and I cut you off. Ed, you want to make a motion?
Whoops.
I move that we approve the annual liquor license renewals for 2020 as listed in the packet, provided that all items be completed.
Yep, thank you.
Yeah, there were a couple inspections, things like that, that we didn't get the paperwork in, so, yep, good. Any other discussion? Anyone from the audience? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Naked against, abstained?
Right.
Okay. Moving next to all the license renewals.
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the annual auto license renewals for 2020 as listed in the packet.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
We got, next one is vote common victors license renewals.
Chair, I move that we approve all common vittler's license renewals for 2020 as listed in the packet.
Second, with appreciation for the pronunciation. I don't remember a single Western where they were going out looking for victuals.
It's a tough word. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passed unanimously. Next thing we can pronounce, annual seasonal lodging house.
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve annual and seasonal lodging house or inn holders license renewals for 2020 as listed in the packet.
Second.
Any discussion from the audience? All in favor?
Aye.
Passed unanimously. F is vote to approve participation request.
So, Mr. Chairman, you have first based on the request that you're going to be asked to vote on shortly, a member had a request to put the remote participation policy in the for the board's review and for possible amendments to that. So that's the item you have in the packet that precedes the request for remote participation.
My only comment on this is that have remote participation. This is for a longer time period than so it's an exception to that. We just approved one of these like 3 weeks ago. And this makes sense to me. I wonder if we want to maybe not have a policy, but understanding that we can stand one of these per committee. We can't have a lot of these going on. So there's some limitation of the number of remote participants that go for extended time periods. That's my only concern. Don?
I not only agree with the chair, but there was something of a misunderstanding for the one that we did approved prior, because I'm looking at it here in the text of what we got. If you're doing this, you can't chair the meeting
Right.
because you're not there. You not only you can't count as the quorum, and you can't chair the meeting. So if you are the chair, you have to relinquish the chair to someone else. Or if you're in line to be the chair and the chair's absent, they got to skip over you because,
You can't count as a quorum?
no, you have to have a physical quorum to be able to get to this.
That's not our rule, that comes down
State.
from state
Really?
open meeting laws, yeah.
That's interesting. We didn't have that in Pennsylvania.
And the state is where I found that you couldn't chair a meeting either.
Because it makes no sense, you can't, I was, any case, but that's not our, that's beyond.
No, understood,
our
understood.
control.
Yep.
Probably not for regulatory bodies.
But you can
What?
participate.
You can't participate, and you can vote. My concern was, I hate to, you know, if we get more requests, I'd like to limit it to one per committee so it doesn't get overwhelming.
And I hate associating this with a person because it's a positional thing to a certain degree, but I will say that there is a difference to me. And so, Mr. Harris particularly, I know, worked heavily on the DCPC when he was here. He's very knowledgeable, and it's important to keep people for
Well,
continuity's
I
sake.
think they should do it, yeah, I'm all for this.
Yeah.
But I
Just
agree
wondering
with you.
how far
We
go.
shouldn't have like 2 out of 5 people in Acapulco.
Problem is, we do live in an area where, you know, a lot of people go south for 2-3 months, so. And it's a challenge because a lot of those people are the very ones that
But that's not apparently 100% effective.
it's tough, it's tough.
I'd be comfortable if someone makes a motion that.
I'd be willing to make a motion that Mr. Harris be able to remote participate for 5
And-
meetings.
Is there a second?
Yeah, I'll second.
And I think from my perspective, I'd like to see it in the minutes at least that we pay, it's more difficult to give the second person this approval from the same committee.
It was our sense, I'm pretty sure you
Yeah.
can say that.
Well,
Ed?
in this case, Mr. Harris is requesting for 5 meetings. If, you know, 3 meetings from now, one of the other members says, well, you know, I'd have to be out of town, family illness, and I'll miss a meeting, but I can, are we going to deny him the ability?
No, I'm thinking of the long-term,
Okay.
the long-term meeting. People are going for several.
No, I think it's good, you gotta be reasonable about it. you know.
Yeah.
I'm not considering 1, 2, 3 meetings. I'm thinking if someone leaves for a couple months,
A planned
a
absence.
plan,
Yeah,
that's my only concern.
yeah, agreed.
So the second member would be allowed to
I'm
participate?
not questioning that,
Yeah, okay, good.
because I'm not gonna judge when you have 1 or 2 absences for whatever reason.
So do we,
We have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Greg?
I'd just like some clarification on that one. Particularly interested because I've served in many town boards and now I'm growing older and I do spend a little time out of town. And it has been a little complicated and I've actually been in an embarrassed situation where I've been in one place and another board member's been in another place and I've had a full board sitting here and I'm trying to make the cohesiveness to establish and accomplish what the board's set out to accomplish. So I just wanted to clarify this, so in actuality, if I hear you correctly, in the decision that you're making, is that any board member can participate remotely, but not as chair, not as to be chair, but as to make a quorum?
No,
No. Okay, so just for opinion,
there has to be a quorum and they can be added.
in the room?
Then they can be
Okay.
added, yeah.
And that's state law, is that correct?
Right.
Yes.
Okay, I just want to clarify that. Thank you.
Okay. Any more discussion? If not, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
aye.
Aye. Pass.
Can I ask the chair, as a point of information, why we would have in the packet applications for entertainment licenses? There doesn't appear to be an analogous
No, that's a good,
agenda item.
I missed that. If it's not an agenda, we can't discuss it. So
That's,
we'll move on.
other than to
from
point
there.
out it was there and we can't discuss it.
I'll try to clarify that, but we can't discuss it if it's not on the agenda. Next on the agenda is the discussion, and Steve, I'll turn this over to you on this Harwich Center initiative.
Well, yeah, we've had either one or two letters from the committee under the signature of Paul Doan. One, I think, requesting the extension of the existing group, but as well in interest in having a greater participation from the Board of Selectmen, which we've discussed. I don't know whether you didn't want to, you had some to move ahead at this point, or?
I think I'd like to discuss what we have in front of us. My only hesitation was that I had one of the committee members call me this afternoon and request time in front of the board to give a report from what they've done up to date.
Okay.
We haven't had a committee report from this, and so I'd like to not take any formal action until we hear that report.
Okay.
The second point I wanted to on this is, Steve, you went through a nice letter talking about what should go on. I just want to remind the board that we have a committee. They had a good discussion about their own, what they want to do within their mission.
Mm-hmm.
But the board voted on a committee structure. And so if we renew it, we need to renew it based on what's there now. What we voted on before. That's my point.
Mm-hmm. And, you know,
I think there's a lot of it. Go ahead. I mean, I think we need to move on. But.
Right, and but would potentially, what I think the board views as a greater participation, and that's to be defined, but a greater participation from the Board of Selectmen.
Right.
And you and I have discussed that, and I'm willing to be the representative to the committee. So, but we can move on that at a different point.
Greg?
Once again, I stand at the podium. Thank you, gentlemen, for taking the time to take this into consideration. As you well know, I work with Paul Doan and Dan Wolf. Paul was sort of the founder of the third time around.
Yeah.
And he's an old townie. Paul Doan's mother was Doris Doan, and she married her husband Howard Doan, and she never had to change her name. That's just the truth. And then I'm dealing with Paul, who's in New Mexico, and Dan Wolf, who's in Israel. But we've really had a lot of time to consider our initiative and sort of re-amalgamate some of our original thoughts. And I think what Mike just, Steve just said a minute ago, is that I really believe, I honestly believe, Paul and Dan also believe, that we need greater participation from our leaders, the Board of Selectmen, to help us out here. I think that the original group that was brought together was spontaneous, and many of them were people that were working for the town who had really not that much enthusiasm because they aren't business owners and so forth and so on. And it makes perfect sense that if you have to go to a late night meeting to do this part of our world, you don't want to do it if you don't have to. So we're really looking for, and I think that you'll see as things have been changing over the last year, that we have some very positive things developing in Harwich Center. We've had some obstacles, and we've dealt with them. And I think that one of the things that this commission, in its short term, has been able to do is was to take this derelict piece of real estate across the street that was the old gas station, and really work with the HDHC, the Historic District Commission, and the Planning Department to come up with something that was really credible for the village, that really looked like it belongs here. So what I'm asking on behalf of Dan, who's our chair, and Paul, who's our vice chair, is your interest in participating with our article here that recommends that we continue this commission. I thought it was over-optimistic to believe we could do it in a year, and sorry, Paul, Dan. I didn't think it could happen, but I honestly think we're on a good plane right now, and things are happening, and I love the enthusiasm that I'm getting from the board, and I love what's happening in the town. So I would just ask that you please take this into consideration. There are a couple of amendments I'd like to make to it, but I won't bring that up tonight.
Ed?
Yeah, you know, I attended a couple of the meetings of the committee, and especially the last one that they've had. At that point, there had been a number of discussions, and a large part of the topic of those discussions were issues about traffic and congestion and circulation and those sorts of things. And the committee it had been indicated to the committee that there was going to be a traffic study done, primarily done by the Cape Cod Commission, but somehow that has sputtered and not occurred, and they're sort of at this point waiting for, you know, that to sort of continue on with those discussions over transportation issues. The other issue is, you know, if they're going to discuss sort of economic development of the center, that's one thing. But if they're folks to come in and invest in it, it's really not an appropriate position for town committee members to be trying to, I mean, that's sort of a private economic development organization to do that.
I completely concur. And I will say this, to give as much information as I can. Having been, as I say, third time around on this, we started out with the Cecil group 1990, I don't remember, a long, long time ago. And we were apple pie in the sky ideas of gas lanterns and beautiful and blah, blah, blah. Nothing like this could ever happen if you don't have economic development in a village. So what we're trying to do now is to put the horse before the cart where the horse belongs, and just get the economics in line before we go for the beautification. What we have, obviously, tell anyone else in this town hall or anywhere, that one of the most magnificent little historic villages and municipal villages that any little town could have. Unfortunately, we have a desperate little economic village center, and that's kind of where we're working at right now. So I think when Paul and Dan and I discussed this, we asked you, the Board of Selectmen, for your participation, not necessarily for your immediate involvement, but just your consideration as to the order of our agenda.
Thank you, Greg. Don?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Doubling back to what you said originally, it would seem to me you come in, you report on where you are based on the original charge, where you've gotten to. You've got Ed, who lives in the area. Dave has a clear passion for this. It would seem that when you come in, you should also say the charge relative to what we want to do probably needs to delete this thing and add this in the future. But dear God, make sure it has an expiration date, because we just keep acquiring committees that are permanent. You'll never see the end.
Well, we put out
even if it's 2 years or 3 years or something.
I think we're asking for 3 years. That's what I have here, and I'm not sure if that's the...
But it would make more sense if you come in and there's a sheet of paper that says, here's what you charged us with doing, here's what we did, here's what we would like to see happen. It's going to probably take us 3 years, and these gentlemen here could probably help us.
I'm sure I can clarify that.
I'm sure
I don't want to take any more of anyone's time on 2 days before
Thank you,
Christmas,
Greg,
but I know I can clarify that.
Thank you. Let me suggest then that, Steve, I'll throw this back to you.
Sure.
And you know, we had a charge that expires
I
at the end
understand
of this
that.
month.
Yes.
That's a starting point to see if you want to revise that.
And
And we can schedule, first week or two in January, we can ask, I understand from Jenny that she, since there was not activity for some time, she just really rolled up the last minutes, apparently, a few days ago. And get together and give us a report of what was done during that charge, what has to be changed, and we'll move ahead. We're all for it. I mean,
Oh,
we
I
have our
understand.
backing.
I'm sure we're all on the same page, it's just the formalities have to be addressed, and that's,
Well, formalities, and I think we need as you say, it's been going on. I've only been here 20 years, and it's going on since I've been here. We'd like to get as many
believe me.
thoughtful steps going forward as we can.
And now with the thought in the town to have an overall plan for the town, I think we have a mind to trying to coordinate with the West Harwich initiatives, Harwich Board, each of our villages, trying to get these to fit in together. I mean,
And it has been
That's a-
complicated.
And that's a great point, because in some ways, the proper endpoint of this is an input into the comprehensive plan.
yeah.
I'm getting old, I can't hear. I can't
I
hear you,
want,
Larry.
I'll speak louder.
What's
We can-
very curious is, and Steve alluded to this, we are a town of many villages, and each one of our villages are sort of arguing with each other as to what belongs here and what belongs there. This particular village here is interesting because it's our historical center, but it's also our municipal center, and it's also the center of two of the largest school districts. I mean, the Monterey Regional and the Cape Cod Regional Cape Tech. I mean, it's right here in Harwich Village. So there is a way to develop Harwich Village, Center Village, that will be unique from East Harwich or Harwich Port. And that's what we're striving to accomplish. So
Greg,
that's really our.
Yeah, you don't need to sell this tonight, though. We'll come back. Okay.
You can see I'm a little passionate.
We're already interested.
But you have,
Historically passionate.
you have,
Barbara would have told you that. All right.
very
thank
true.
you.
Okay.
Okay, we've done enough on that, Steve. Thank you for that.
You bet. H.
We're on to H, is approve the Harwich Affordable Housing Trust Grant. Joe, you wish to?
Yep, Mr. Chairman, actually, the next two, both of these items are relative to community preservation grant funds that were approved at, for this one, the 2018 annual town meeting, under Article 58 for $500,000. It's been approved by CPC, it's been approved by the Affordable Housing Trust, and now it just requires the board's approval and signature. And the second item is relative to the 2019 annual town meeting, Article 42, for $340,000. And I would recommend that the board approve and sign.
So this is basically, not to simplify, but clerical
Yeah.
aspect, you clean it up.
The grant's already been.
Right.
Yeah.
Ed?
Chair, I move that we approve the Community Development Preservation Act grant agreement between the town of Harwich and the Harwich Affordable Housing Trust, sort of like we're shaking hands with ourselves.
Yep.
Is there a second?
Well,
Second.
there's two different agreements.
Any other discussion?
There's two agreements. One's for 1 year and
Yeah.
one's for another.
Okay, yep, well, this is for the first year,
For the first year.
2018.
2018.
So we have a
Is there a
second.
motion and a second?
Yep.
Yep.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Move to the next one then. Ed, you can
Move
do it
that
again.
we approve the grant agreement between the town of Harwich and the Harwich Affordable Housing Trust for 2019.
Yes. Second.
Any other discussion? Not, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, we've discussed Jay.
Yep.
Joe, thank you. Old business, I sent, I guess, I don't, it's in our package, right? I don't see it.
No, Mr. Chairman, I apologize, it did not make the packet again this week. I know we were talking about the potential search committee. The timeline has that item for January 6th. The agenda item for January 13th would be the discussion of search firms and interviewing search firms.
Okay.
I can report that I have spoken with one of the search firms so far, what type of services they provide, the kind of costs that would be at various levels. which I can do a write-up, and I'll give that in
Okay.
give that in the next one. I plan to talk to the other 4 that, you know, or 3, I think it is, that we had out there, so. And then, of course, they'll come in and you guys will interview them.
All right.
But just to give you some, you know, information that you'd have to use going into the conversation.
Okay. And we've missed the timeline twice now in the packet, so we'll get it in next time, huh?
I apologize, Mr. Chairman, that's completely on me.
Next then is the town administrator's report, and first on the agenda is the staffing needs. We talked about this last week, and Joe promised to follow up on some aspects here. So Joe, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So you'll see in the memo, I did reach out to former acting assistant town administrator Bob Lawton to see if he had any interest in availability to resume that role, and I'm very pleased to report that he does and he's interested. I've laid out the particulars in the memo, but he is willing to return as of January 6th at the same rate of pay and roughly the same schedule to help get, I should say, to continue the progress being made in both the personnel and procurement areas. That's my update.
And helping us prepare for town meeting.
Right.
Correct, as well as additional resources within town government that I will have conversations with appropriate department heads and then report out to the board if I'm successful.
Okay. What we're using before and what is the proposal, Joe, is 2 days a week,
That's correct.
I believe, to help
Yep.
out. Any other, Don? Yeah.
Yeah, since we've been down this road before, I want to make it street legal. I mean, whether it's acting or permanent, it's still subject to confirmation from us because of the level. It's
Oh, it
same
is,
as the
yeah.
department head.
Right. No, I
So
agree.
I'd like, I mean, if it's appropriate, I'd like to make a motion that upon the recommendation of the acting town administrator, we accept the employment of Bob Lawton as an acting assistant town administrator for 2 days a week.
Second.
Second.
Yeah.
Any more discussion? This will help take some of the stress out, and Bob comes with a lot of experience and knowledge of the town. So,
Oh, absolutely.
any other discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It's unanimous. Joe, you did put in the town budget timeline. I think you're trying to scare us. You put this in every week.
I promised that I would, but, Mr. Chairman, before that item, if I may, I did put another memo in your packet, and it's more an administrative item, but last signed by the town administrator and presented to the DEP along with some of the payrolls. However, the action item is that the board needs to notify DEP of my appointment as the interim town administrator, and therefore why my signature would appear there instead of Chris Clark. So on advice of CDM Smith and representatives at DEP, I included in your signature packet basically a letter to DEP stating exactly that I've been appointed as the interim administrator.
Could you just pass it down? We'll sign it. I don't think.
Sure,
we need an action.
It's in the packet.
in the
If you want to give me
there,
the
but-
packet, I'll
We'll
sign
need
it.
action on that. We'll just sign it.
I just wanted the board to be aware of that letter. So I'll be signing those documents once the letter has been sent
Okay.
to DEP, so they're not returned.
Okay.
And then, as you've noticed, Mr. Chairman, the budget timeline is in there. And really, as I've mentioned earlier, the big item coming up next is the capital outlay plan hearing on January 6th. Have had meetings with all of the department heads, as I've mentioned, working hand in glove with the finance director. And we're getting to the point where we're going to be getting down into the details of budgets and try and formulate a budget for fiscal year 2021 without major impacts to services. But there is some storm clouds on the horizon.
Okay.
So more to follow on that in the new year.
Okay. Thank you,
Happy
Joe.
New Year.
Moving on to selectmen's reports then. Don?
Nothing other than wish everyone a happy Hanukkah, a Merry Christmas, and if you don't celebrate either of those, a very happy and healthy New Year.
I get the double dip on that one. My wife is Jewish, so we celebrated Hanukkah
So you have
yesterday, and now we have a Christmas party coming up in a couple of days, so why not? Ed?
No, I just wish everybody Merry Christmas. It's a nice time of year. I've been involved in a couple of activities, helping pass things out to those less fortunate than most of us, and it's a time to bring a warm spot in all our hearts of the type of community we are, that we have make the resources available to help out all of those in need.
Yep. Good comment, Ed. Steve?
I don't think I could have said it better, but I'll also just say happy holidays and a happy new year to everyone.
Yep. I can repeat that, but you know. Anyone care to adjourn us? Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you much.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.